Okay, Precalculus. I'm going to go over the Unit 2 formative Lesson 5 assessment. There are 4 questions. So really, this can be difficult and it takes a lot of practice, and we don't have time to do a lot of practice. I'm glad you're watching this video. So, and it doesn't really matter usually where you start, but I particularly like to start with the amplitude and the period and the vertical shift, because those are the easiest things for me. Finding A and finding D. And then B and C will get last. My dogs are excited about something. So if I just pick the highest and the lowest point here and count this distance, the amplitude's half of that, and it's the absolute value. So that's why A is 2. Then if I look for my vertical shift, I can see if when I move halfway down in between this graph, right is the center line. So the x-axis has been moved down 2. So that's why D is a -2. Now the middle part gets a little bit more confusing. So depending on whether we're writing a sine or a cosine function, in this case, it's easier to write sine. So the reason we know this is if I just take this original 0, 0 point and shift it down 2, I can see this as a sine equation because it goes through 0, 0. If it was cosine, it would be even and it would go through 0, 1. Or another point not at 0, 0. But here's our new 0, 0 on this new line that's been moved down 2. And it's going through that intersection. So it's easiest to go ahead and write a sine function. So knowing that, we are not going to be doing a phase shift. There's no phase shift here. So now all we have to do is find B, because the phase shift is our C. So to find B, we just find 2 points. We start at beginning and end of a period, and you can do it at high points, you can do it low points, you can do it really any point you want. But one full period, I just picked this high point and this high point. So we went down for high, all the way low, and then back up again. And so the difference between 2 pi and 10 pi is 8 pi. Well, in order to find B, when the period for a sine or a cosine function is, why is it not drawing? 2 pi divided by B. Well, 2 pi divided by B in this case equals 8 pi, because we counted. That's 8 pi. So that means our B has to be 1/4. Because if I do keep, change, flip, I'm multiplying 2 by 4. Because we don't divide by fractions, we multiply by the reciprocal. So in that case, my B has to be 1/4. So I go ahead and put in, you can put in 1/4 times x. I'm just going to put in x over 4. And then we don't have you can put -0 for C or not. So just leave it there. Number 2. So I go ahead and I find the high and I find the low, and this distance, half of this distance is the amplitude, so my A is 2. Then I notice that my x-axis has been shot up 2. It's moved up by 2. So that's why my D is +2 at the end. And in this case, yet again, we are intersecting the new x-axis here, our new 0, 0. So there's going to be no phase shift. Now all we have to do is find B. So we just find 2 points. I picked the high points again, and it's really hard to read these, but it looks like 5 pi over 4 minus 1 pi over 4 gives us 4 pi over 4. So that period is pi. Well, normally the period for the cosine or sine for the parent function is 2 pi, and that's divided by B. So 2 pi divided by B gives you pi. So that means B has to be 2. So B is 2, and then we have no phase shift. So we're done with that one. Number 3, so I start with my amplitude, my high, my low, and then I go ahead and count halfway. It looks like this distance is 8, so my amplitude is 4. And then it looks like the x-axis right in the center is now going to be at 1. So that means my D at the end here is +1. Now there has been a phase shift, because you can see if I try to write the cosine function, if I try to write a negative cosine function, I could use this phase shift. But since in this particular equation we know it's going to be positive just because of our options, I have to go with this phase shift, this distance. Okay? So let's not worry about that yet. Let's go ahead and get the period. So I just picked 2 points and I said, all right, from here to here, that's, 9 pi over 4 minus pi over 4. So that's 8 pi over 4, which is 2 pi, and that's period hasn't changed. So that means my b is 1 because the period is 2 pi divided by b. So if the period is 2 pi, then b has to be 1. So that's why there's a 1 in front of x here, which I didn't write. And then for the shift, we're moving to the right. The only thing that we can use here is going to be 7 pi over 6. It's to the right, so it's minus, and this is 7 pi over 6. The reason why you know it's 7 pi over 6, and with this graph, it's like, where is that exactly? You can see it's above pi, and it's just a little bit above pi. Well, 7 pi over 6 is just a little bit above pi, because pi is equal to 6 pi over 6. So you just do your best when you're, when you have points that you're plotting or you're reading. Number 4. So my amplitude is going to be 1/2. And it looks like my D, this line here, the x-axis has been moved up 2. So that's why there's a plus 2 at the end. So let's go ahead and find the period. The period is, looks like we've got and I just tried to do my best. I picked pi over 2 and 5 pi over 2, and I just subtracted them. So the period's 2 pi, so that means my b is 1. Let me go ahead and stop this for a second. Okay, so I'm noticing down here I wrote sine, when in fact the only option we have left to graph is cosine. And again, all of these can be graphed as sine or cosine, but we have certain selections here. So it looks like if we're graphing cosine, here's our high. Okay, so what is that shift? Well, it's pretty small. So and it's to the right. And our b is 1. So there's just a 1 in front of that x. And the only option here is pi over 6. So that's approximately pi over 6 when you look at the graph. All right, peace out.